Welcome to the Popish Plot. I'm Nate.
I'm Jessica.
And I'm Mike.
And today we are here with another story about a saint. If I'm not mistaken, is this another saint of...
Well, this is a servant of God, but yes, it is another African-American on the path to sainthood. And you'll be both happy. The length of time that we think she was born in is at least 5 years shorter this time.
Ooh, so what? It's like
I don't
25
know.
years?
I kind of like that 15... I've gotten much more comfortable with that 15-year window.
However, we're not 100% sure
Are you a newborn
where she was born.
Hey! As long as there's some uncertainty.
So, we are doing Servant of God, Mother Mary Lange.
I don't know her.
She was born between 1783 and 1794, and it's possible that it was in Haiti. It's possible it was in
Domingue.
Yes, but most people think it was in... I'll have you say
Santiago de Cuba, or Spanish Cuba.
Yes, that was the place within, Spanish Cuba.
You know what? Given the fact that it could be any one of 3 separate islands, I am totally fine with us not knowing when.
Yeah, and most ones also say it's probably between 1784 to 1789.
Sure.
And her name at birth was Elizabeth Clarisse Lange. And we know when she died.
Hey! We got that one nailed down.
Of February 3rd, 1882.
Okay.
So if I had planned ahead, she would be the first one I would do on her feast day, but I did not.
And that's okay.
And she is the patron of the Oblate Sisters of Providence.
Ooh.
Which, for servants of God, it's usually, this is kind of hypothetical. No, this is her order. She's in charge of it.
Yeah, totally reasonable.
Mm-hmm. And anyway, her family were refugees from a revolution that was happening, which is why there's a question of which of 3 places she was born. Because we know that they moved to Cuba, and we know that she likely grew up French-speaking, and in the area of Cuba where the French-speaking refugees were at. And also, her family seemed to be well off because she was very well educated for the time.
Okay. I believe the Haitian Revolution started in 91. I believe it was 1791.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, anytime when she's a very little girl, her family would have had to flee because as good as it is to overthrow slavery, the Haitian Revolution was quite violent.
Yes. In the early 1800s, she moved to the U.S., and she ended up in Baltimore, Maryland, which is where many of the French-speaking Catholic refugees ended up. And she was settled there by 1813. Some sources think that she moved there right away because that's where a lot of them. Some suggest that she moved around the country. I've seen between 1 and 3 other possible places she lived during that time.
We've got a lot of locational uncertainty. I like it.
And when she showed up in Baltimore, she saw that many of her fellow immigrants of the Caribbean, their children needed education, and as this was pre-Civil War, most of them were of African descent. It's not like they could go to the public schools.
Yeah. Well, there wasn't really a public school system yet, but yeah. Children of color certainly could not be educated.
Someday we'll do another one about how we decided we needed a public school system when all the Irish came over for the potato famine, but at the very minimum, what they did have for, education, they had a hard time. Even though none of them in America were enslaved, still they had all the biases and, racism. So she decided she was going to open up her own home.
Hey!
And along with money that she had, because, again, we think she was fairly well off.
Yeah.
She would give them a free education with the help of a friend who was Marie Magdalene Balise. And this was the first Catholic school for African-American children in the U.S.
Awesome. Often we are confronted with the problems of the world and we just get overwhelmed saying, what can I do? Sometimes God just wants you to do what little you can, and it makes a huge difference.
And she is not the only American saint who saw a problem, and the correct answer was, well, you deal with it. I mean, she didn't even have to have the Pope tell her, you know what, you can do this.
Holy Father, you should send the missionaries. You be the missionary.
You're right. I should.
However,
I wish you the best on your way. What? You said I should send the missionaries. Yes, you should.
Well, again, that's just like we've encountered in the Knights. When you have a good idea, if you mention it, you've automatically agreed to be chairman.
He said I should send. He said I should send missionaries. You should. I choose you.
Okay. However, she did have a certain amount of that she was she was asking God for direction, and in 1828, a Father James Hector Hubert, in the Archbishop of that time, James Whitfield, asked her to start a school for girls, professionally, because she was running out of her house. The priest seemed to also be someone who was a refugee from the Revolution and of French-speaking background.
Well, 1828. So this is before, as you mentioned before, large numbers of Irish began to arrive. Yes, there were large numbers of Germans, but no, I mean, a lot of American Catholicism at this point is still going to be very French influenced.
Yes, and because she had the priest there with the Archbishop's backing, she went and asked if perhaps a female religious order should be started too, because she felt the call to be a religious sister. However, at that time, there was no way that a African American in America could become a religious sister.
Yep.
So,
unless she's the one making the rules.
Yes. So he was for it, and he helped make the first group for women of African heritage in America to become religious sisters.
Nice.
Awesome.
So on July 2nd, 1829, her and 3 other women made vows to the new order of the Oblate of Sisters of Providence. She took the name Mary, and she was named the Superior General from 1829 to 1832, as well as from 1835 to 1841, being the first ever African-American Mother Superior.
Amen. But as we see from the fact that she wasn't in charge the entire time, letting the democratic process work within the order.
Yep. They did have online where you could see the first paragraph of the rule, because of course a lot of the rule is going to be just general, same that most all religious sisters are going to have, but the first paragraph kind of goes over their special charism.
The Oblate Sisters of Providence are a religious society of virgins and widows of color. Their end is to consecrate themselves to God in a special manner, not only to sanctify themselves and thereby secure the greater glory of God, but also to work for the Christian education of colored children.
Amen.
Amen.
Which is a big thing that they did. By 1860, they ran all the Catholic schools in Baltimore for African American children. During the 20th century, they had schools in 15 states, and currently they still exist. They have members in the United States as well as Costa Rica.
Amen.
Woohoo.
But along with educating the fellow children of her immigrants, she did many other things. She acted as a nurse to the sick during a 1830s cholera epidemic. She worked as a domestic help in the local seminary.
Sure.
And was the novice mistress for the order from 1815 to 1860. And she also did various other things, helping orphans, widows, spiritual direction, vocational training, religious education. For a while, she was a school principal at one of their schools. She taught night classes for the adults so that they could learn reading and writing, as, most of them didn't have an option for that.
Yep.
And so she worked in the order until such a point that she was just so old and so sick that she had to retire because she, went blind and,
So you just physically could not do it anymore.
She was between 88 and 99 when she died.
Yep.
So, it was only the last few years of her life when she actually had to kind of retire. And
until she absolutely could not do it. Even when it was painful for her. Even when many people would have said, you should kick back and relax. You've been a good servant of God for these many years. As long as she was physically able to do it, she was.
Would that we all could have that kind of determination.
Amen.
And in 1991, the Archbishop of Baltimore officially started the investigation of her life. And in 2004, her cause was officially opened.
Awesome.
So, much like many of them that we've discussed, her cause is relatively new, even though she lived a while ago.
Yep.
As in the area, it seemed like everyone knew her.
Yep.
Because, like schools are named after her and stuff like that. But
well, there was still a sad reluctance to pursue these causes. So, she's been declared servant of God.
Yep.
Do we know anything about the current state of the cause?
I did not see any updated information.
Totally reasonable.
So we're still waiting on that venerable status.
Although, it seems from what we've seen that she almost certainly did live a life of heroic virtue. And then after that, we simply wait heaven's confirmation.
Yeah. And starting that order, actually, I mean, this order, it kind of has some of the hallmarks that you would expect from an order that was something that should be started, because if within 15 years of 20 years of starting it, she's the novice mistress, that means they've got enough people coming in that they need to have somebody who's tending to their development.
Yes, I mean, they did, fairly quickly run all the schools for African Americans in that area.
Yep.
Which meant that not only did they have women joining the order, but they then, either had to teach them for becoming teachers, or they probably went up through the school system because that was pretty much how they would get an education at that time.
And their good works persist.
So, go down below. Tell us what you think about Servant of God, Mother Mary Lange.
Please let us know if you have any clue to narrow down any of the locations in question.
Yeah, maybe you have an
a lot
inside
of them
track that we
said
don't know.
that it was probably Cuba. It's just there was a certain amount of question in them for where she was born.
Extra points if you can actually throw in more doubt and a fourth possible location.
While you're down there, remember, we are always on the lookout for new saints that we can go and talk about, or, other religious topics that maybe you have questions. We have answers. They might not be the right answers. They might not even be good answers, but we have answers. While you're down there, make sure to hit the subscribe button, the bell next to it, so you get notified when new episodes come out. Hit the like button, because liking an episode isn't going to hurt you.
What's not to like?
And remember, until next time, to live your faith.
Love your faith.
And share that love.